Today we're learning how to shoot in slow motion the right way. Let's get started. Alright, so this video is all about slow motion. I'm going to show you guys how to properly shoot with it, and I'm going to break down how to properly slow it down later on in post. So the most common type of slow motion would be 60 frames a second and 120 frames a second, and in this video I'm going to break down the settings for both of those. But first things first, you want to go into your camera settings and pick the frame rate you want. So let's start with 60 frames, and the first thing you're going to notice is that right next to the 60 frames there's another number with a big M next to it. That's actually your megabits per second, and typically in most cases what you want to do is just pick the higher number. Like my A7 III lets me shoot 60 frames a second at 25 megabits a second and also 50 megabits a second, and there's really no reason why you should be going with a lower option. Just pick the higher one, it's just going to give you better quality results. So go on with 1080-60 at 50 megabits a second here, and the next thing you want to make sure is that your shutter speed is set to double the frame rate, or as close as you can get to double. So in this case your frame rate is 60 frames a second, so you want to go with the shutter speed of 1/25th of a second. Now this is just a general rule of thumb that gives you the most natural motion blur in your videos. Now moving on to 120 frames, you basically do the exact same thing, just pick the option with the higher bit rate. My camera lets me shoot 120 in 50 megabits a second or in 100 megabits a second, so naturally I'm going to go towards the 100. I pick that, I set my shutter speed to double that, so the closest I can get it would be 2/50th of a second. Once I have that, I'm ready to go, ready to film. Once you're done filming, let's load up Premiere and let's go over how to properly slow down your footage. So the first thing you want to do is start up a 24 frames a second sequence. Now for 24 frames you have two different options. You can either go 24.00 or 24 drop, which is 23.976. 24 drop is actually the more commonly used frame rate, and that's what I recommend you set up your sequence as. And just remember that number, 23.976, because you're going to need that later. So once you have that set up, the next thing you want to do is import all of your footage into Premiere. And all of the clips with a different frame rate, you want to select all of them, right click, go up to modify, and then interpret footage. Now here in this new menu at the top, it's going to say the frame rate of your footage, and right below that it's going to have an option saying assume this frame rate. And there you want to enter 23.976. Now what this is going to do is it's natively going to slow down your footage, and it's only going to show you 23.976 frames a second. Basically that gives it the perfect amount of stretch required to slow down your clip. Now when you drag it into your sequence, your clip is already slowed down. I used to do it the old-fashioned way where I would drag the clip in my sequence and then right-click on it, go up to speed duration, and then change it that way to like 40% for 60 frames or 20% for 120 frames. But that's technically not the perfect amount of stretch required. There's always going to be a little bit of an overlap, which I honestly don't want. Another big benefit of interpreting your footage this way is that whenever you go to warp stabilize, it's not going to ask you to nest your sequence. Now this is something I've dealt with for so long. Every time I would slow it down the old-fashioned way, it would ask me to nest the sequence before I can stabilize it. Now I know slow motion is pretty much stable already, but sometimes I want to actually throw another warp stabilizer on like 5% or 10%, and I have to nest my sequence every time. Now it doesn't sound like much, but if you do it like 200 times in a sequence, it really starts to add up. So doing this is like a one-time thing. You drag your clip in, it's already slowed down, it's a native 24 frames a second clip. So it really saves you a lot of time and a lot of hassle. Alright guys, so that was slow motion done the right way. If this video helped you out, don't forget to leave it a big thumbs up, subscribe for more videos like this, and I'll see you guys next time.